Hey everyone, this is Carrie Newton with Parker Properties, and in this video we're going to talk about repairs. So we're gonna, of course, make the assumption that buyer and seller are selling a property that has a structure, a house on it, okay? So repairs. Oh, it's like the funnest part of writing a contract. It's the funnest part of negotiating a contract. Any agent will tell you it's challenging, okay? So first off, inside of our contract, and I'm looking at my computer, in section 7 of our contract, which is called property conditions, there is a checkbox, and this is probably the most confusing checkbox on our entire contract, and probably the one checkbox that I get more questions on than any other checkbox on the contract. And what it says is, I'm going to read it exactly, okay? It says check one box only. Box number 1, buyer accepts the property as is. Box number 2, buyer accepts the property as is, provided seller at seller's expense shall complete the following specific repairs and treatments. Then there's a blank. Then in parentheses, do not insert general phrases such as subject to inspection that do not identify specific repairs and treatments. Okay, so let's talk about this box, and then let's talk about repairs inside of a contract, okay? So if the buyer checks the box that says buyer accepts the property as is, that does not mean that a buyer cannot request repairs. That means that at the time that the buyer looked at that piece of property, they visually did not see with their eyes anything that they at that point did not want to ask for a repair on, okay? That's what that box means. Box number 2 says, and I've already read it, so I'm not gonna read it again, but it does specifically tell us that we cannot put in there subject to inspection. Right? We cannot put those general phrases in there. So what that box means is the buyer went out, buyer looked at that property with their own eyes, and there is a broken window at the front door. Like the window that goes to the front door is broken. So buyer says, I will pay you X amount of dollars for this piece of property, but it is subject to, straight out of the gate, subject to the fact that the seller will replace that broken window that the buyer saw with their own eyes, okay? So that's what those two boxes mean. It is so confusing when it says buyer accepts property as is. Both the buyer and the seller get confused on that, okay? The buyers think, I can't ask for repairs. Like I have to, what if the inspection comes back and it says, oh my gosh, like this property is literally one gust of wind away from falling apart. I can't ask for repairs. I have to buy it the way that it is. No, you do not. You can ask for inside of your contract what's called an option period. That option period allows you the chance to have an inspection, and you can, as a buyer, during that inspection period, ask for repairs, okay? Or terminate. That's a whole nother video, but you have the opportunity to ask for repairs inside of that option period and inside of that contract, okay? Sellers also get super confused by this. The sellers, you know, the buyer will have an inspection done and the buyer will come back and they will say, will you fix X, Y, and Z? And the seller goes, you gave me this contract, it was as is. Like, why are you asking for repairs? You told me, Mr. Buyer, that you're gonna buy it the way that it is. No, that buyer did not tell you that. That buyer said that at the condition when I looked at it with my eyes, I didn't see anything. But when that inspector went in and the inspector said, hey, there's some issues with some plumbing, or there's some issues with the roof, you know, this, that, and the other, that changes things. Like, that changes the buyer's mindset on purchasing your property. So buyers and sellers don't get that confused. That does not mean you can't ask for repairs, and sellers know that, sellers please know is how I should word that your buyer does have the right to ask for repairs inside of that contract. And they have the right to say, if you won't repair this, I'm not gonna purchase it. you know, this negotiations, this is how this works. You would want to have an inspection done on a piece of property. So your buyers are going to have an inspection. You know, it's two-way street. Okay, so I'm talking around in circles here, but okay, repairs. Now that we've discussed that, does the seller have to do repairs? Absolutely not. Absolutely not. Buyer can come to you with 5 pages of safety concerns and just huge major issues and say, Mr. Seller, I need you to fix all of this stuff. And the seller can say, no. They don't have to give you a reason. They don't have to tell you why. They don't want to. You know, it's their prerogative. It's their right. It's their piece of property. Same goes for the buyer though, right? Right? So if you go to Mr. Seller and you say, Mr. Seller, will you make all of these repairs? And the seller says no, buyer can say, okay, I'm not going to buy it anymore. I'm going to terminate this contract because you won't make any repairs. So just know that it's a real sticking point inside of contracts. It's a real sticking point for people. Just because that contract says as is does not mean that they don't have the right to ask for them. It doesn't mean that a buyer can't ask. It doesn't mean that a seller can't tell you no. It's all part of, kind of going through the motions of that contract, okay? So that's repairs in a really short video, and there's a lot more that my brain's like, tell them this, tell them that, tell them this, but that's for another day. Bye, guys.